Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 764, April the 27th, 2019, Saturday. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning, I hope. Sorry, yesterday's video didn't get uploaded till afternoon, but you know, I got time, well actually Spectrum. Oh yeah, it's Spectrum, but I still make my checkout to Time Warner. It's Spectrum, but I make my checkout to Time Warner. There's a problem here, and I get about two. It seems like at least once, maybe twice a week now, it's becoming more, it's not getting better, it's getting worse with failed uploads. And that's why the video was late. I get up in the morning, the video is supposed to be ready to go. It's not. It's stuck at 8%. So I have to re-upload. Then I have to come home at lunch to make it go live. So, not very happy. And I know it ruins some of your day when you get up, you're ready for your morning coffee, and you want to watch The Seeker. And what happens? He ain't there. So, anyway, we'll do the best we can. Let's see. Let's get back to the news of the day, and we got a lot to cover here. I'm going to have to go very fast today again. But before I do, I just want to make one comment. Something that's just in the last 2 weeks is really something's really dawned on me in the last 2 weeks. Just incredible things that have come out in the last 2 weeks. Bombshell things almost every day. Multiple bombshells. A lot of them coming from Papadopoulos. But when I first started doing these TowerGate videos, over 2 years ago, I knew this was a big scandal, and that's why I've stuck with the story all this time. Even during a lot of the time in the very beginning, the first year and a half, where it wasn't looking good, and a lot of people saying, "Oh man, these people are never going to be brought to justice. They're going to sweep this thing under the rug. They're going to cover this thing up." And I was saying, "No, this story is too big. You cannot keep a story this big down." And I believe I'm being proven correct. As we see, it is being exposed. Exactly how it all turns out and who gets indicted and all that sort of thing is yet to be seen. But there's no question that we've reached a point now where this story is definitely not going to go away. It is going to be unraveled, and we'll see what the fallout is from it. But what I've noticed here, I knew it was bad back in the very beginning. We were talking about, okay, they surveilled Trump Tower. I'm thinking, okay, well, they spied on Trump, and I'm thinking, okay, they just launched some, electronic surveillance on him. Naughty, naughty, that's not good. And if that's true, there's going to be some people in trouble. And then we learn about, the dossier, and then we learn about where it came from, and then we learn about spies in the campaign. We learn about the setups and the frame-ups, and we learn about all these things going on. And it's throughout the course of it has been just like all these types of things are. It's drip, 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 a little bit at a time. But at some point, it becomes just an avalanche, a waterfall. And we're at that point now, getting very close to the point where this whole thing is collapsing very, very quickly, just as I said it would, because it's too big of a story. But I have to be honest with you here, in the last week or two, with the things that we're learning, especially what we learned 2 days ago, about the fact that this spying had been going on in the Obama administration, not just 2015, not just about the Trump campaign, but had been going on for 4 years, at least under the Obama administration. So what I'm starting to figure here is that this thing is actually as bad as we all know it is, and as bad as it is that we've been talking about all these things that we've been learning about. And we haven't been surprised about a lot of this stuff. We knew it. I mean, we knew the Trump Tower meeting was a setup. We knew about the agent provocateurs setting up Papadopoulos and Carter Page and Michael Flynn, trying to set up Caputo, trying to set up Stone. We've known all this. So when this stuff, finally leaks out a year after we've been talking about it here on TowerGate, and we all know, so we're not surprised when we learn that the Rotten Reverend paid for the dossier. We assumed that a year before that. We weren't surprised when we found out about the setups and the frame-ups. We were pretty sure that's exactly what was happening. So none of these things really surprised us. But in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the stuff coming out of Ukraine, the stuff we're learning about how deep and intense the spying was, all the people who were connected. Now we find out that they were trying to co-opt someone inside Pence's team. All these things. I think in the last 2 weeks, I honestly have to say that as bad as all this, that I believed all this was a year ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, as bad as I thought all this was, I honestly have to tell you that it's actually worse than I thought it was, worse than I ever thought it could be. And honestly, I think there's a lot more left to learn. I think there could be stuff out there that we can't even fathom right now of exactly how bad this was. We know this was a global effort. The entire New World Order crowd was out to get Trump. It wasn't just the Democratic Party or Hillary Clinton's campaign or Perkins Coie or Fusion GPS. No, it included the FBI, the CIA, British intelligence, Australian intelligence, Italian intelligence, Ukraine, Estonia, I mean Germany. I mean you name it. What is extraordinary, and we've talked about this before, is how in the world did Trump win? I mean, he didn't just beat the Democrats. He didn't just beat Hillary Clinton. He beat the entire planet that was out to get him. Absolutely, almost a miracle. You could actually make the case that this was a miracle of some sort. I don't know any other way to describe it. But again, this is even worse than I even imagined. And I thought it was pretty bad, but this is even worse. And again, I think we're going to find out much more. We're going to stay on the story. Been on it for over 2 years. And we're now getting to the point where things are going to start happening very quickly. And I know that behind the scenes, there's a lot of very nervous people. Now, they're caught, and they know they're caught. They can't say that they weren't trying to steal cookies out of the cookie jar when you actually catch them with their hand in the jar, cookies in their mouth, cookie crumbs all over their clothes. They can't say, uh-oh, I wasn't trying to steal cookies from the cookie jar. No. So they have to come up with something else, like, oh, I was just testing the cookies to make sure they were good to eat. I thought they may be stale, or something like that, or I was whatever. So they're going to have to come up with some reason, and obviously they're going to have to say that they really believed. This is going to be probably the only thing I can think of that they can say that is going to try to cover them. There's no doubt that they did the things that we're finding they did. We have all the evidence. So they can't really say we didn't do it. So what they have to say is, well, we did do it, but we did it for a good reason. Because we believed that Trump really may have been co-opted by the Russians. He really was working with the Russians, or the Carter page really was doing this, or Papadopoulos was really doing that. This is going to be the only argument that they can make. But it's not going to hold up. It's not going to hold up. And one of the reasons it's not going to hold up is because these idiots were stupid enough to communicate what they were doing in the clear. I mean, we have their texts. And remember, we haven't seen all the texts. We've only seen some of them. I mean, they did these things pretty much out in the open, out in the clear. They left a tremendous amount of breadcrumbs. And we know that they lied to the FISA court. There's no doubt about that. They said the dossier was verified. It was not. They used it to do almost everything they did, and they knew it was a fraud. And this is the reason they're not going to get away with it. They're not going to get away with it. They're going to try, but they can't say we didn't do it. They're going to say we did it, but we did it because of this. And then it's just going to be they're going to try to play semantics. They're going to try to say, well, we believed it. So, I don't know, maybe they're going to say, okay, well, we weren't criminal. We weren't doing anything wrong. We were just really stupid, really incompetent. And I don't think anyone's going to buy that. There's too much evidence. And, again, there's a lot of evidence, information we have not seen. But there's a lot to dig through here. And it's not going to work. These perps are going to be held accountable. They absolutely are. Now, let's move on to today's news. So, as most of you know by now, they have discovered now, particularly Grassley and Ron Johnson, have discovered more Page Strzok text. More text from the lovers. Peter has been stroking us, and he continues to stroke us, and he will continue to stroke us. And Lisa Page, who I expect is going to be a singer. I believe she's got a career in singing coming up. So these new Peter's been stroking us, Lisa Page texts suggest that they were working to cultivate a source or sources inside the Trump transition team. They talk about this person, Katie, this Katie is who we think Katie is, then she worked under Peter's been stroking us. And her husband, this Joshua Pitcock, was a senior leadership position on Mike Pence's staff. Now, today, Pitcock has come out and made a statement, a fairly lengthy statement, denying all the allegations. Is he lying, or is he telling the truth? that is what we will have to ascertain. For now, I'm not giving this guy the benefit of the doubt. Not doing it. We'll find out. I'll remain unconvinced at this point in his statement and consider myself very suspicious of his denial until I have more information. The tweet suggests that a counterintelligence person was put in and did attend some meetings. Grassley and Ron Johnson are the ones who discovered the texts, and they have sent a letter to Attorney General Barr to go along with all the other letters, criminal referrals, and everything else. He's being flatly overwhelmed by this scandal right now. He knows how bad it is. The conversation in question took place, this particular texts took place in November of 2016. This would be after Trump had won the election, which means coup. The election's over. So now why are they putting someone into Trump's transition team? He's won the presidency. Could only be a coup. And keep in mind, there are many texts from Lisa Page and Peter's been stroking us that we have not seen. We need to get all the texts from Lisa Page and Peter's been stroking us from the period of October 2015 to today. I have no doubt that they're probably still communicating in some way to figure out a strategy to try to figure out how to avoid capital punishment for treason. They both better have a team of lawyers, because those two are absolutely going to jail. Period. Right along with their buddy Andy McCabe. John Solomon. As you know, I follow Ukraine now every day. I look for things about Ukraine every day because it's going to be a key part. Because now we know that the origins of the Trump-Russia hoax, the Trump-Russia theory or what have you, started in Ukraine. And it looks a lot like those so-called Russians who were meddling in the election weren't really Russians after all. Looks like they were Ukrainians. So, John Solomon, in January of 2016, the Obama White House summoned Ukrainian authorities to Washington, to the District of Criminals, to coordinate ongoing anti-corruption efforts inside Russia's most critical neighbor. This included Ukrainian prosecutors and investigators who were brought to the meeting to meet with Obama's National Security Council, Federal Bureau of I'm With Her, and the Department of Injustice. The primary discussion topic was about VP Joe Biden's family business ties and a lobbying firm linked to candidate Trump. That would have been the lobbying firm of Manafort and Gates. In March of 2016, the case was shut down that was involving Hunter Biden, and the prosecutor was fired per the request of Obama and Biden. That was March of 2016. In May, in fact, on May 29th of 2016, was the leak to Alexandria Chalupa, to Isikoff, Michael Isikoff at Yahoo News, and that is what got Manafort fired. The Black Ledger. So that shows that the Obama White House was coordinating with the Ukrainians on multiple levels. They were involved. The FBI had their own place set up. Both embassies, both in Ukraine and the U.S., were involved. parliamentary members of the Ukrainian government coming to D.C., this Alexandria Chalupa, this Democratic operative working as a go-between, these crooked prosecutors in the Ukraine from the NABU, sending classified documents to Izakov, Confusion GPS, Glenn Simpson personally, Chalupa, probably David Kramer, Senator Magoo's right-hand man. Massive and incestuous type program running between the Obama administration and Ukraine, and apparently this goes back even earlier, back to 2014. There's a lot to uncover in the Ukraine. You know, my friends, it's time for a talk with Uncle Bob the Executioner. Don't you think? Profanity alert. This son of a bitch, 500 people interviewed, 19 Democratic Trump-hating headhunters posing as lawyers, 40 headhunting FBI agents, anti-Trumpers no doubt, thousands of witnesses, $35-40 million. That's what was spent by Uncle Bob the Executioner. He did an entire investigation, but he did not point out at all the problems with collusion on the other side. He didn't point out the problems with the FISA abuse. He didn't point out the problems with the private contractors accessing the NSA database. He didn't point out the problems with the agent provocateurs, the problems with the Trump Tower meeting setup, the attempted setups of Caputo and Stone, the shady dealings of figures like Mifsud, Downer, Greenberg, and the fat man, Stephen Halper. Nothing. Who they were working for, and what this is all about. He missed it all. Impossible. You could not conduct an investigation. And remember, what was his charter? Here it is. He was tasked with investigating any matters that arose or might arise directly from the investigation, which was, of course, the Russian meddling in the 2016 election. It appears that he only investigated one side of it, and there was nothing there. But he should have, in the process of doing that, discovered all the things I just mentioned. He had to have. Impossible. There's no way you can investigate all this and not know what really happened here. Not a peep out of Uncle Bob and his report about any of this. All he did was leave a trail of crumbs for the Democrats to use in a so-called obstruction violation, if you want to call it that. What a scumbag. This son of a bitch better lawyer up. He was part of the coup. He was an extension. He took over the coup. That's all he did. He picked up the coup, picked up the baton, and carried it through the finish line. He was hoping to succeed, but A.G. Barr threw a wrench in his spokes and told him to shut it down. And now he's got a lot of problems. We need to have a conversation with Uncle Bob the Executioner and the Hillary donor posse, specifically Mr. Weissman and Jenny Rhee. It's disturbing. We need to have a talk with Uncle Bob. Personally, I don't need to talk to Uncle Bob. I know enough from reading his freaking report, or at least what is the summary of his report, and knowing what really happened. In my opinion, Uncle Bob should be immediately brought forward, charged, castrated, stretched, quartered, and then tried for his crimes. Nothing was investigated in regards to how the Obama administration, meaning Clapper, Brennan, Comey, failed to act on the so-called Russian meddling in the 2016 election, and how and why they failed so badly. If this was truly an investigation into the Russian meddling, then why is there nothing in there about the massive failure? How is it that all this went on? And the Obama administration was aware of it. And they apparently did nothing to Russians. They launched counterintelligence operations on Trump. They went after Papadopoulos. Can anyone explain that? I don't think so. But Uncle Bob needs to explain it, don't you think? Nothing about the rotten Reverend Clinton and her connections to Russian interest, to include the Clinton Foundation and matters that were before the rotten Reverend Clinton when she was Secretary of State, such as the transfer of uranium. And how about that dirt that the rotten Reverend Clinton campaign was digging up on Trump using so-called Russian sources? Nothing in the Mueller report about that. How could he miss that? He couldn't. Nothing about the dossier being the biggest part of the body of evidence to justify launching Operation Crossfire Hurricane. I don't even know if the word dossier is mentioned in the 448-page fairy tale. Nothing about the FISA warrant on Carter Page being signed off on by Comey, Yates, Rodenstein, and McCabe. And whether or not they perjured themselves to the FISA court. Nothing. And he saw it all. Nothing on the real truth on Joseph Mifsud, who he really is, who he's really connected to, who he was really working for. And here's a better question. They interviewed Mifsud February of 2017. Why wasn't he charged with the crime? They knew he was the one that told Papadopoulos that the Russians had Hillary Clinton's emails. He should have been arrested on the spot. Papadopoulos was arrested at the airport. Two other people whose names escape me were arrested at the airport who had practically minimal roles in any of this. Yet here comes the guy that actually dropped the information that started the whole thing. And Uncle Bob doesn't appear to have figured out, according to his report, that Mifsud was working for Western intelligence. They still describe him as a Russian asset. They knew he was the one that dumped the shit on Pops. He should have been arrested as soon as he got off the damn plane. But he wasn't. Why not, Uncle Bob? Nothing on Confusion GPS or Glenn Simpson throughout the entire Mueller report. All we ever see is the phrase, quote, the firm that produced the Steele reporting, end quote. Never uses the word dossier, never uses the word Confusion GPS, and never says the word Glenn Simpson. Why not? They were key, integral parts. How could he leave that out? Mighty suspicious, don't you think? Nothing about the fact that the Russian lawyer, Vetselnitskaya, was working for Confusion GPS on the Prevazon case, or that Simpson, Glenn Simpson, met with Vetselnitskaya before and after the Trump Tower meeting. And I believe in the PM meeting, Akhmechin was there. And speaking of Akhmechin, nothing about Akhmechin or his Clinton connections. Oh, and let's not forget, he was also at that Halifax International Conference where Senator Magoo learned about the dossier. He just happened to be there. And when asked if he spoke to McCain, he couldn't recall. Something tells me he did. And why, Uncle Bob, did you scrub the phones of Peter's Been Stroking Us and Lisa Page after they were released from the investigation? Aren't they both subjects of an investigation themselves? Well, yes, they are. You destroyed evidence, Uncle Bob. Why? Did you discover, Uncle Bob, why Comey waited 8 months to inform Congress of the investigation into Trump? He attended 3 hearings, where in those hearings he's supposed to discuss sensitive investigations. That's why they have the hearings. But in all 3 of the hearings, he did not say a word, not a peep, about the Trump investigations. And the reason? It was sensitive. He attends 3 meetings for the sole purpose of informing Congress of sensitive investigations, and then refuses to tell them because the investigation, he says, was a sensitive investigation. That's a problem, don't you think? How is it possible that they could be looking at Trump for obstructing when in fact the investigation that they're referring to about him, he was never told that that even existed. In fact, Comey told Trump 3 times to his face he was not under investigation. How could Trump be guilty of obstructing an investigation that he was told 3 times did not even exist? Don't you think that's a pretty good question for Comey? I think it is, and I'd love to ask him in front of a grand jury. And also in regards to Michael Flynn, when they're talking about Trump being involved in possibly obstructing that, because that's where they were going to go next. Fact is, Trump did not know Flynn was under investigation. He was never told that Michael Flynn was under investigation. So how could he be trying to obstruct when he told Comey, hey, Flynn's a good guy, why don't you kind of back off Flynn, you know? That's obstruction? Well, Comey had never informed Trump that Flynn was under the investigation. So obviously Trump could have been asking Comey to back off an investigation. He was talking about harassing the man at the time. There were hundreds and hundreds of leaked classified documents and information. Did Uncle Bob ever get to the bottom of even one of the illegal classified leaks? As far as I'm concerned, I can't find anything in the Mueller report. Nobody else can. And that would include the big one, the Flynn Kislyak phone call. How is it that Uncle Bob could go through all this, all that money, all those investigators, all the resources, unlimited, and not find out who leaked the Flynn call? Someone needs to ask Uncle Bob about that. There's a lot of questions for Uncle Bob and the Hillary donor posse. And when we get to the bottom of this, I think it's going to be obvious that that he knew exactly what he was doing when he took over that investigation. It was all he was doing was taking over the coup, taking control of the coup. He knew what he was doing. I do hope that at some point they get the communications, as I've said before, between all the communications between Mueller, Rodenstein, and Comey, from the day that Comey was fired to the day that to the day that Mueller was appointed. There was a whole week went by there. I can almost guarantee you that they communicated, and probably have to throw Andy McCabe in there as well. Those guys were talking in that week. Uncle Bob knew exactly what his task was: to pick up after Comey and continue the coup. Uncle Bob was part of this coup. And I do believe when we get to the bottom of this stinking barrel of rot that that's exactly what we're going to find. And they need to hang that son of a bitch high. Okay, just some other little things that we learned today. Trump told Sean Hannity last night on his program, when Sean Hannity was asking him specifically about what he was going to declassify, the Carter Page stuff, the small group stuff, the 302s, Bruce Orr 302s and all that. And Trump came back to him and said, hey, I'm going to declassify all that and more. I'm going to declassify everything. So obviously this is a timing thing. Trump has been holding on to this. There's something that he is waiting for. There's some point that he's waiting for that he thinks is the right time to dump it. I think we're getting probably pretty close to that point. Because one of the things that was stopping him was when he wanted to declassify. There's two things really stopping him. Number one, Uncle Bob went to court and told a judge, if Trump tries to declassify, we're going to consider that obstructing our investigation, and we want to go ahead and make that, a fact in court. We want that on the record, and then they informed Trump's attorneys of that. Number two, when Trump talked about declassifying before, he was contacted by several foreign governments and asked not to do it because it'll reveal their embarrassment and their criminality and being part of the coup. So what happened in the last week? Well, in the last week to a week and a half, pretty much it became public about the fact that the UK was involved in spying during the 2016 campaign. The Australian government released, on the day of the Mueller report was released their documents and their statement on their role, supposedly their role in the affair. Then we get this leak about Misfit and the Italian government, and we find out that Trump had a phone call with the Italian Prime Minister, and the next day we find out where Misfit is, and they make a statement. They're trying to get out ahead of it because they know it's coming out. So now, all three of those countries really have nothing to say. It's public information, public knowledge that they were involved. Now, they're lying about the extent of their involvement and the intent of their involvement, but that'll come out too. Trump's not going to cover for them. And why should he? Especially Theresa May. She's not going to be around that much longer anyway. Most likely when Trump goes to visit the UK, I think in the month of June or July, it'll likely be Boris Johnson that he's meeting with, not Theresa May. Well, we learned from Devin Nunes that he still is continuing to get daily death threats, and that's been going on for a very long time. Devin Nunes is a trooper, man. I got to tell you what, this guy has got brass balls, and certainly hope he has good security, because these are some crazy-ass people, and getting daily death threats, I'm sure, is no fun. Of course, we had another Biden gaffe. It's hard to keep up with him. Most politicians make 10 gaffes or one gaffe a week. Biden makes 10 gaffes a day. They're hard to keep up with. So he's asked some question, and Biden responds by telling reporters that America used to be straight. I'm pretty sure the lefties aren't going to like that one. Trump got a huge round of applause at his NRA speech when he announced that he was going to remove the signature of John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam. He's going to remove the signature of John F. Kerry from the UN Small Arms Treaty. Well done. And he should also while they're at it, charge John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam. They need to serve John F. Kerry just like they did. Yates went after Flynn for the Logan Act. Well, Kerry actually did violate the Logan Act. He should be charged, again, like Mueller, charged, castrated, stretched, and quartered, and held accountable for his crimes. Rodenstein admits in a speech that the FBI leaked classified evidence in the Russia probe to Democratic lawmakers. And finally, last but not least, the skateboarder, he's done. He gave a rally yesterday and only drew 35 people. I told you that the skateboarder wouldn't be around long, and I'm telling you that Uncle Joe, he'll get a bump. He'll raise some money for about a week or 2 weeks. He'll raise the money. He'll get a bump, and then he will start going down. Because once you become the front runner, everyone attacks you, and Biden is a target-rich environment. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.